talk about encrypted email and how we might set that up in an iOS and an OS X environment. Why is this a thing that we might even want to consider? Well, for starters, email is basically like a postcard. And without some kind of encryption, any computer that touches or handles your email on the way to its final destination can capture the content of it. So just like in a postcard, you have a front side that has some sort of image of something you want to share, on the back side, there's also this personal note that you might have. And email also has that kind of information. There's information about where it's going and where it's been, but there's also the content of the email. And just like any post office employee that can hold the postcard can see the back of it, so any computer that can hold your email on the way to its destination can also potentially see the back of it. So because of that, we need to be aware that lots of computers can touch an email on the way to the destination. So for example, your local internet service provider, the one with whom you make a connection from your computer to the greater internet, they necessarily see all the traffic that's going from your computer to the rest of the internet. If you have an email service provider like Google, Google can also see your email. That's the basis of their business, is basically automatically looking at your content, your search queries, and trying to give you appropriate advertisements. Someone else in the transfer chain might also be able to look at your email. For example, if you're sending your email to someone who's reading it on a mobile device and they happen to use Verizon as a data provider, Verizon can see the content of that email as it's traveling over the cellular networks in order to arrive at the destination device that's being read. And finally, your recipient's ISP may also be able to read that email. So that would be the organization to whom your recipient connects in order to get access to the internet. They can also see that. And just sort of as a point of information, there are 14 computers that touch all of my digital communications on the way between where I am now and arriving at, say, an email entry point for yahoo.com. So 14 different computers. Some of them identify themselves, but 2 of them don't even identify who they are. So each of those computers, in principle, can possibly see what's being sent in my email. Now, there's one caveat to that. That is that there is a technology called TLS, or Transport Level Security, which many email providers support, which can prevent those in-transit computers from being able to see what's being sent on your email. So this is a little bit like HTTPS in your browser. But even if your email provider provides TLS, and while many do, not all of them do, they themselves have access to your email because they have to be able to see something about your email in order to move it to the destination. And anyone who partners with your email service provider can also see the content of your email, whether that's by choice, for example, if your email service provider is Google and that's provided by your company, or whether it's by force of law, where a legal agent, through a legal order, someone may subpoena the contents of your email. If it's available on these email providers' disk drives, they can also have access to it. So what we're talking about in this tutorial is enabling peer encryption. And this is the kind of encryption in which there is end-to-end encryption, in which one sender encrypts their email such that only one recipient can receive it. And more specifically, what I mean by that is one person holds a set of digital credentials that encrypts the email, and another person holds a set of digital credentials that can decrypt that email on the other side. And then anyone in between, whether it's an email service provider or a computer that touches the email, isn't able to read that email without having access to those credentials. So this is a little bit tricky, and there's a little bit of overhead to it. So your recipient also has to participate. So it's not possible to send an encrypted email just with work that you do on your own. Your recipient also has to do similar work, and so that's necessary. If you do this work and you only send the email and your recipient doesn't also do the same work in response, then your email will at least be digitally signed. And that's a way of ensuring that your email came from a person who had these digital credentials. It prevents snooping, the kind of email, it prevents spoofing, the kind of email that you get when it appears to be coming from one person, but it didn't come from them at all. So there are lots of reasons why you might be interested in encrypting email. You might want to do this in order to ensure compliance with privacy regulations, perhaps HIPAA or FERPA regulations, if you take them very seriously, could require encrypted emails. You might want to be able to demonstrate to a client your ability to safely handle sensitive information. Perhaps you're a lawyer and you want to ensure that your communications are not intercepted or spoofed. You may be someone who's engaged in a whistleblowing situation where you need to tell someone outside of your organization about something that's happening within your organization, in which case you don't really want your organization to be able to have access to your email before you're able to get this important information out. You might be interested in hiding your email from a competitive company that has access to the networks that you're using to send email. So say you're a company that operates in competition with Cisco or Huawei. These are two major manufacturers of network technology, and in principle, you don't really know what they're doing on their routers in terms of capturing and analyzing email. Finally, you might be interested in sending email to someone in a foreign country, and you would like to be sure that any of the networks that are potentially controlled by the foreign state aren't able to decrypt that email, at least while it's in transit. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how to do this on iOS and OS X. The way we're going to do it is we're going to obtain credentials from an organization that, number one, is trusted by your operating system, and number two, can verify your identity at some level. Mostly that's just by sending you a test email. We're going to load those credentials into the Keychain Access program that's on OS X. That'll enable us to send encrypted and digitally signed email from within our computer. And then we're going to export our credentials to our disk drive, and then we're going to send them to our device via email. And then we'll install them on our device. So in order to do this, what we're going to leverage is we're going to leverage a company called Komodo.com, and Komodo will offer to provide free email certificates to people who sign up with them. They're good for a year. Now, two caveats about this. When you decide to start sending encrypted email, it means that you're only going to be able to read your email on computers that have the decryption key installed. And out of the box, Gmail doesn't support this. So once you start sending encrypted emails using this technique that I'm going to describe, you won't be able to read your emails through the Google web browser. You'll only be able to read it in an application, for example, Apple Mail, which is what we're going to demonstrate here. Okay, let's go to that website now and pick up an email certificate. What I have over on my left is my Keychain Access application, and here you can see that I have several expired certificates for the email that I'm interested in. So in particular, what I want here is I want to be able to get a new certificate for my email listed there so that I can send encrypted and digitally signed emails from that location. All right, so to get our free secure email certificate, we're going to sign up with Komodo, and I'm going to give them my identity credentials and the email address that I'm interested in working with in order to get this certificate. My country is the United States. It asks us to make sure that we give our browser permission to generate a key for you, and that means we're going to have to click on the padlock on the address bar, and if in the permissions section, set key generation to always allow on this site. So we can go ahead and check that if we want, and key generation blocked by default, so we're going to go ahead and I'll always allow on this site. Great. We're going to get the highest grade email certificate that's available to us, and here I'm going to put a revocation password in. So revocation password is if for some reason someone is able to get access to your credentials, you can say that this email certificate is no longer valid. So to do that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to ask for a new password item from Keychain. And I am going to just click here on this password to generate this. I'm going to crank it up to a really high length, and I'm going to keep track of this separately. And I'm going to use letters and numbers. And so here's an example of one. I'm going to go ahead and use a different one, and I'm going to block it out here on the camera for a second. Okay, I copied it to my keychain. I copied it to my clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in there. I already get the Komodo newsletter through other channels, so I'm not going to be interested in that. Go ahead and read through the details of the subscriber agreement and hit next. All right, and the next thing that happens is that an email is going to be sent to the email address that I specified in order to make sure that this is the point at which they validate your identity. This at least validates that you have control over this email address. So I'm going to open my web browser. I'm going to open my mail client. Once mail is loaded up, you should see an email from Komodo in which there is a link available in order to install the Komodo certificate. What that's going to do is that's going to send you to the location on the website, which is going to work through your browser. You can open it in your download folder. Move this over to the right. Double click on it in order to install it into your keychain. And I'm going to add it. When I do that, you can see that because I have this filter set up here for this email, I now have a certificate indicating that I have something associated with my email address, which will allow me to digitally sign email messages. I'm going to go ahead and right-click and set New Identity Preference and say that this certificate is the preferred certificate that I want to use when I sign emails from DJP3 at djp3.net. I'm going to add that. And now when I go back to my email message, I can delete that email that I just received, but I'm going to start a new email message. And when I select the appropriate account from which it should come, you can see that over on the right, I have the ability to select whether or not I want it digitally signed or not. When that box is checked, it means that my email is digitally signed, and it will arrive and indicate as much when it is processed. So I'm going to send it to a different email account. I'm going to send it to a generic email account that I have. So I'm sending it from one person to another person as far as the computer knows, and I'm going to digitally sign it. And I'm going to send it. When I check my email, it asks if I want to use that keychain in order to sign my email. I'm going to say I always want to allow that because I want this to be an easy process in order to send digital encrypted emails. And then when I go to my email inbox and I get new mail, let's check what the process is here. There we go. You can see that I've received an email. Now that color coding is something that I set up as a rule. There's a rule that says that I want to color all my digitally signed messages green. But when I open it, you can see that there's this security setting that says that it's been digitally signed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a certificate also for Donald J. Patterson III at gmail.com so that I can demonstrate this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that initial web page at komodo.com. I'm going to sign up. With the new email address. I'm going to enter a revocation password, which is going to send me back to Keychain Access. And I will say new password item. And I'm just going to use the generator. I'm not actually going to save it. And I'm going to pause the video for a second while I grab an email, while I grab a password. Okay, I grabbed the password in my clipboard, come back here, paste it in, accept. I'm going to get mail, and wait for it to arrive. And once that email message arrives from Komodo, you can load it up. And once it's loaded in, we'll click to install our email certificate. We'll go to the web page where we can recover it. We have a second one now. Show this in Finder. I'll double click on it. It will ask me, the Keychain Access will ask me if I'd like to install it. I click that I would. We can see now that that email has arrived as something, and I will, as a new certificate, I will add that as the certificate that I would like to use when signing my emails from my gmail.com address. So now, back in my email program, my djp3.net email account sent a digitally signed email to my donaldjpatterson@gmail.com account. Well, now I'm going to send a new message back. Oops, actually, I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to reply. I'm going to reply to that email, and I'm going to say, well, this is encrypted email. This is the first encrypted email. We'll put that down there now, and what you can see now is instead of just having the ability to digitally sign it, as this indicates, this would be passing the email through with no encryption at all. I can digitally sign it as coming from Donald J. Patterson III at gmail.com. But because I also received an email from someone who digitally signed their email, I can now encrypt it when I send it back. And when I do this, the contents of my email, although not the subject line, the contents of my email will be encrypted and unable to be seen by anyone except the person who has the same credentials as the person to who sent it to me. So now I'll send it back, and it's going to ask me if I want to use those credentials for the first time when I'm sending from this email account. And so I'll say that yes, I would like to do that. It'll be sent, and then when the email arrives in the other account, momentarily, hopefully, when it arrives and you click on it and you check on security, you can see that it has been encrypted. And so I'm able to read it here because my email program is using the credentials that are built into my Keychain Access in order to read the encrypted email. So now I'm going to reply from my, the recipient here is my djp3.net email. So I'm going to reply from that email, sending it back to the Google Mail email. And I'm going to say, this is the second encrypted email. When I do that, you can see I've got digitally signed and encrypted available, or activated. I'll send it, and I'll switch to my other identity and wait for that to arrive. And we should see that it is also encrypted. And you can see that when it's arrived, it's encrypted. Now, if I go to the browser interface from this account here, this Donald J. Patterson III at gmail.com, if I go to the browser interface and I refresh, we can see that this is the second encrypted email has arrived. But if I click on it, the content there is unreadable. There's no information there. Unlike when I look at it in my browser here, I've got the phrase, this is the second encrypted email, and my signature and the replied message. That's not available to me here because it's all wrapped up in this attachment. And that attachment is where the encrypted credentials and the encrypted message reside. And so although I can read this email in my Mac client, I can't read it on Gmail. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've established credentials from Komodo for two different accounts. And we've sent both digitally signed email and encrypted email back and forth. Now what we would like to do is we'd like to enable this on our iOS device. So to do that, I have to do the same thing. I have to associate this certificate on my iOS device with a particular email account. So let's just work with the djp3 at Gmail account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Keychain Access, and that certificate that I just received and installed, I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to export that to my local hard drive. And I'm going to go ahead and put the email address at the end of it, because if you do this with a lot of different email addresses, it can get confusing. And it's a P12 format encryption. So I'm going to save that in my downloads file, and I am going to put a password on it. The reason why I'm going to put a password on it is because this email can be intercepted, and if there's not a strong password on the certificate, anyone can get my credentials and have the ability to send email as if they're coming from me. So I'm going to put a password on this, and this password is important that it's tight, because we want to make sure that no one can steal our credentials. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to, let's see, come up with one. Hit OK. That was the password for the file, and now I need permission to actually do this from my operating system. So I'm going to allow that export to happen. Okay, now I have exported the credentials for Donald J. Patterson III at gmail.com. I'm now going to come back to that account in email, and I'm going to send a message to myself. I'm going to send a new message to myself. And I'm going to digitally sign them, but I'm not going to encrypt them because I can't decrypt them yet. The file itself is password protected, so this should be fine. Try again. Wait for that notification to go away. Refresh. Here's the second credentials. Now I should be able to see the attachment as a set of credentials. And if I click on these credentials within this application, I'll be kicked over to a second interface. I'll be kicked over to a second interface where all the details of these certificates are kept, and it'll ask me if I want to install these, and this particular set of credentials. I do want to install them. I have to enter my phone's passcode, which I'm going to have to block here. I'll go ahead and install it. I now have to enter the password that I protected the file with, so I'll have to block this too. That installs those credentials into my computer, into my iOS device, and now I have to associate those credentials with an email account. So I'm going to go to my settings. Well, I guess I already was. And go back to general. It'll let me. Locking up for a second. Back to settings. Go to my, select the account. Go to advanced. Select SMIME. Sign it, but make sure we select the certificate that is trusted and hasn't expired. Go back. Encrypt it. Make sure we select the certificate that is trusted and hasn't expired. And then we have to make sure that we go out and we hit done. Once we hit done, we can go back to our mail account. Okay, so next thing let's do then, let's get our other account installed on the phone. Here's the valid one. We'll export it. Protect the file. Allow the export. Now we'll go to that account. We'll send a new message to ourselves from that account. We will attach them. We will digitally sign them, but we won't encrypt them. We will send it. Then on our phone, we will install the credentials for this second email account. Wait for it to load up. There we go. Go ahead and install these. Install again. We're done. Now we're going to go to our settings, and we are going to make sure that this new account is associated, that these new credentials are associated with our account. So we'll go to our account. This is the account we just got the credentials for. We'll click Account. We'll go to Advanced. We'll make sure that our credentials. So if we select the first one, we can see that those are the old ones, not trusted and expired. Select the second one. We can see that this one's trusted and not expired. Go back. And we'll also make sure we encrypt by default. Select the good certificate. Go back. Make sure we go back to the point at which we hit Done. Okay, we now have the credentials on our phone for both of these accounts. So the first time I'm going to do it, I'm going to send it simply as signed. And if I want to be able to send encrypted emails on my device to this person, I have to install their certificate from an email that they send to me. It's not really letting me do it. Okay, so now if we go to my Gmail account, we can send an encrypted email from my Gmail account to my DJP3 account. And you see that on the desktop, it's been encrypted. And then on my phone, this is from the DJP3 account. I should be able to reply to the Gmail account. I guess I have to install that certificate first. Now I can reply. Say it's encrypted. All right, and then the indicator at the top there shows that it has been encrypted and signed. So that's been the process by which you go. That's the process by which you set up your credentials so that you can send and receive digital certificates on your OS X and your iOS device. You can see that on your iOS device, it has a few more steps. But if that's an important thing to you, it's worth it in order to manage those encryption certificates. Okay, thank you for your attention.